and welcome to Your Choice 2020 Primary Election Coverage with HOMTV. I'm Eva Bratz, and joining us today at Central Park is Meridian Township Parks Commissioner, Democratic candidate incumbent Michael McDonald. Michael has served as the vice chair for 4 years and is looking to serve another term as this election is uncontested in both the primary and general election. Michael, before we get started with some of the topics today, spend some time to introduce yourself for maybe some of the viewers who are unfamiliar with you.
Well, I could start back at the beginning where I was born in a log cabin, but that was, I was actually born in a state park.
That sounds interesting. You should start with that. Okay.
I was born in Warren Dunes State Park, and my father was the manager, took Parks and Recreation at MSU, and then time went on and I spent 35 years with the Michigan DNR, and much of that was with the Grants Division, which at times was in Parks Division or Executive Division. We kept getting moved around because we had $50 million a year. So the site we're standing on is one of our 1978 grants, and when you take a grant, a local unit promises to keep it open for the public in perpetuity. So while the basics of that long ago grant have probably been recycled and redone, and I actually know what they were, this site will always be an area open to public outdoor recreation.
Okay. And what would you say you're most excited for in the upcoming election?
Well, I think I'm most excited to see this nationwide bidder campaign end, and I'd like to see Meridian Township and other communities around the country too to move on next year and further with some real progression of our quality of life, especially our parks.
Okay, and going into that a little bit more in depth, what are some of the core platforms, values, and just functions of your department that you run by?
I think that the biggest credo we and other park commissions should abide by is that we're a policy-making body. We don't tell the Parks Department where to put the trash cans or who to schedule in the U8 soccer game, which some Parks and Rec commissions get into too much minutia. But under our leadership of Luann Maisner, director, and Amanda Lick, our chair, we're a policy-making body, and I think the most exciting thing I'm looking forward to is us executing the actual construction of some really huge and competitive grant projects, one of which will be behind us a ways, and that is the new walkways and bridges and so forth in Central Park. We also have an ongoing grant at Harris Nature Center that's under construction right today, and then it isn't fully under the Parks and Rec department, but we're all super excited about the marketplace on the green, that if there is some side noise you hear, it might be because of those construction vehicles.
All for a good thing coming, right?
August 23, I've heard.
Oh, that's exciting stuff. So those are all kind of things in the future.
Yep.
So looking back, what would you say some of the greatest accomplishments that your department has achieved?
I think that if we're going to look back and get some different perspectives, it would most certainly be the additional land we've added over time, because developing land is necessary for a growing community like Meridian, but also it's extremely incumbent, and our department has done this. Luann has been here 17 years, so our department continues to look ahead, and when willing sellers and willing buyers, which would be the township, are out there, we've added some super duper parcels of land to our realm of acquisition and acreage, both in natural areas and in parks. One of which is really our most recent one. It may not be that obvious to everyone driving even down Jolly Road, but just a couple of years ago we signed the papers to buy 80 acres just south of Legg Park, and again, that land will always be open to the public.
Just as, recreational use, or do you plan to build something on there?
No, we do not plan to build anything on there. There's adequate access for the public in terms of a casual parking area or not formal parking area, but that's a very, am hesitant because of my career in Parks and Rec to call anything that isn't really sensitive. But that's very nice land that does not need a ball field, a bathroom, or tennis courts.
Sure. Just keep it the natural goodness that it is.
That's right. So people can go out there and continue to have the great time they're already having properly recreating at Lake Park.
There you go. Maybe your birthday party out there.
I
His
know.
birthday is coming up, guys.
My retirement party was at Hawk Island.
And I wasn't invited.
You were about 3 then,
Okay,
I think.
about 3. Missed it by that much.
Maybe 5.
Well, in addition to the wonderful things that you're adding to the community, how else are you strengthening Meridian Township minus the parks, if that makes sense? Like, what other things are you orchestrating?
Well, that's tough to elaborate on the ones that I've already given, but I think the overall spirit of Meridian Township of moving forward in a proper and dignified and user-friendly way. Just to name a couple of key folks, Ron Steika, I'm a Hazlitt High School parent, and Ron is the longtime chair of the Okemos School Board and an assistant attorney general for our state. Great statesman and fellow. And I've been familiar with the work that Frank Walsh has done since he was at the city of St. Joseph. And I knew when he was hired, and me had nothing to do with that part of it, that Frank would fit in great here because of that, can-do attitude that fits Meridian to a T.
And what are your thoughts regarding the current and future balance of park services and resources?
Well, we're extremely fortunate that we have voted, I believe it's twice now, to enact and then renew a millage, and that is based on the SCV or value of someone's home. So I think a modest home such as mine, I pay somewhere $50, $75 a year, and that millage is almost incalculable what it lets us do. About, can't think of a better word, it's a cliche though, is leverage, to use that money to project out and promise organizations or governments like the DNR that we're ready and able to do parks grant projects if we're awarded them. We've got the money, quote, in the bank.
Okay, another cliche, but we love it. So what role do you think the Parks Commission has in open space or green space?
Well, I think one of the great things that Phil DeShane did when he was on our Park Commission, and of course any of us could have thought of this idea, but we didn't, and Phil did, and that is the institution a few years ago of the it's called Love a Park, and on a particular weekend in the spring, volunteers will sign up to go to individual parks to do some cool projects that have been laid out by our staff. So, in effect, that pulls people out who may not go to a park like Eastgate, but that group of people that went to Eastgate did some nice things that particular day, and they're even more, in a sense, connected to their parks, especially Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts.
And probably the most important question of the day.
I thought we'd already been through.
What would you say is your favorite park and why?
Well, there you go. My favorite park is Hartwick.
Okay.
It's near Okemos High School, not Hazlitt High School. It's near Okemos High School, and I'll give you a couple of secret reasons it's my favorite. One is it's the home of some naturally growing each year raspberry plants.
Didn't know that.
And if you can fight the prickers and the birds, you can go and have a nice handful or two of black raspberries.
Good for a salad.
It has some great nature trails, hiking trails. They're open again to everyone and everything except a motorized vehicle. So you're allowed to, take a regular bike, you're allowed to walk, you're allowed to jog. And then Hartwick has also 3 very nice ball fields, which are properly used and just bring a lot of enjoyment to folks. Of course, this year on the organized basis, it's not available. But one of the key uses of those ball fields is for cricket. And I think the aficionados of cricket are more than you might think in terms of numbers, but you can't top them either for enthusiasm. So if you go out there next year when they're having a cricket match, you'll just be amazed at how excited they are to, God knows what they call it. Bowling, I know, is the pitching.
Yes.
We won't go into the wicket part, but
Right.
it's a big deal to folks around the world. And you take baseball, that isn't even close to an around the world sport like cricket is.
Plus, you get raspberries while you're watching the competitors.
Yes. And one last thing.
Yes.
It's one of the few places, sadly, even in a Meridian Township, where native songbirds have a place to hang out and nest because that's the natural environment out there. So you might see a red-winged blackbird, you might see an oriole, and you might see some other birds that you wouldn't necessarily see even in the
Sure.
best of days in a subdivision or one of our athletic parks like behind us.
Well, I can see why it's your favorite then.
Katie Adams, the great naturalist at Harris Nature Center, would always be thrilled to field any questions someone in the township or audience
Okay.
would want to ask about those birds that I probably forgot their names of.
Great birds, though. Great birds.
Yes.
So along with, you brought up Harris Nature Center and Marketplace on the Green, what other projects would you say you're most excited for?
Well, you're really taxing my memory today, and it's fading fast.
And
But
there's a camera. Oh, no.
we're excited, and we want the DNR and the Michigan Land Trust Fund Board, chaired by a great man, Bill Rustum, and staffed by great folks, including Dan Lord, who I think may live in Meridian Township. But anyway, we want them to get as excited as we are about purchasing land for a proper and revamped entrance to Nancy Moore and our office area over on Gaylord Smith, I think it's called, over on the other side of where we are on Okemos Road.
Okay.
There's an estate, a smallish estate where someone has passed on, and even though that's 2 or 3 acres, it's just critical to us making that a proper entrance and getting things set up. If Dan Lord is listening, is get things set up to be a part of that regional hub trail that includes key segments from Meridian Township, Nancy Moore Park, out Nancy Moore to the west, across some natural area on a proper bike path, and connecting someday soon to Michigan State University near Hagedorn.
And do you kind of have a projected date of completion for that?
I'm afraid sometimes it seems like 2150,
Right.
but
To be
it's
modest.
been in the works for 25 years in
Okay.
the planning stage, and I think, I may be wrong, I think one segment, even though that house and grounds hasn't been bought, I think one segment is getting ready to go out for bids.
Well, it's a big project, so that's exciting.
It'll be in the millions of dollars, but just think of being able to take a bicycle or skateboard from here and get to Michigan State without having to go down the side of anything,
Right.
any road.
Train tracks and all that's just
Yes.
kaput.
As far as I know, it does dodge the train tracks.
Oh, then I'm in.
We'll go out and check.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So with the pandemic, I think a lot of people are being more active. I know I'm outside a lot more. So how has the Parks Department dealt with the increase in usership with the parks? Has it negatively
Well, I think
affected
we
it?
were one of the first communities to not only recognize that we had to sadly close down our active recreation and youth sports and adult sports, but also sadly for a while our playgrounds. But I am very proud that Mike Devlin, Luann, and others have been ready when they were able to reopen those areas to, under the proper guidelines, allow now parents, guardians, and friends to bring their kids back to a Hartwick Park playground where there's very adequate sanitizing facilities for them and a nice pavilion next to them. So during the pandemic, I think our trails are just getting huge increase in use. Sadly, of course, our sports teams are at 0, but I think overall our attendance is up. And so trails, walking on a trail, walking on a grass field, all those things are on the upswing. I think people want to get outside, and they can't go to the movies.
Right.
They can't watch the Spartans play anything. And, well, you better just go out and do something yourself.
Right. And I think it probably takes care of a lot of maintenance. You don't have to go in there and clear the trails because there's people on them all the time.
Well, you bring up a great point. I think in the Parks and Recreation field, if you take great care of what you've got, such as the pavilion behind us and our parks, that it does kind of shame someone to not throw the McDonald's bag out the window as they're walking around.
Right.
Because everyone else has picked up their stuff and put it in a trash can.
And can you comment on how you think the Parks Department has dealt with the past and future needs of the master 5-year plan?
Well, because we've been a part of that preparation, review, re-review, and annual searching through it as we come up with new projects, I think that what we've done and will continue to do long after I'm gone is going to be very much in concert with our recreation plan, which is a very flexible document. Even though it goes for 5 years, at any point in there, if we see some turn in the fork in the road with proper public participation and skillful staffing, we could address something such as maybe a twofold increase in cricket. That's just pulling one out of the air.
Okay, I like it. So apart from, and you might have mentioned them all already, but is there anything else that you plan to tackle in the next 4 years of your term?
Wow, I think what I'd like to see us be able to tackle is to be, whatever that word would be, sure-footed, nimble, you name it, that, again, willing buyer, willing seller, to add a reasonable amount of land to our parks and natural area system. I'll tell you a secret,
Okay.
and that is the national standards for the size of neighborhood parks, community parks, regional parks, state parks, was literally developed by the good-natured seat of the pants by the National Recreation and Park Association, I believe in 1948, because people would always ask them, well, what's the size of a county park? What's the size of a neighborhood park? And I believe I heard the name of the person, but somebody went back to their desk and said, well, what the heck? And so 100 acres, let's say, for max would be the max size of a township park. 1,000 acres might be for a county/regional park, and so forth. I think that you don't have to hit the brakes as you get near that, still use national standard. I just can't tell you, maybe some better folks you're going to interview later, how many acres do we have in Meridian under our control? That's on our website, but I don't know it. But if we add 50 or 100 before my term's done of key properties, I'm going to be excited.
All right. And our last question to close us out, why are you still passionate about being the park commissioner?
Well, I'm more passionate, I think, than many of my friends who might be morticians or even folks that are lawyers and accountants.
Yes.
One of my friends, a dear friend who's probably lives down in Florida, was the recreation director of a major community in southeast Michigan. And Larry became the city manager of that community for a while. And whether he retired from that, I don't know. But I saw him years later at our MRPA Hall of Fame dinners, which folks can learn more about MRPA by going to our website. Okay. We were standing around in a friendly group, and Larry said, Mac, you just wouldn't believe how dead these conferences are of city managers. They're just a big snoozer. But when Parks and Rec people get together, they know how to have a good time.
The enthusiasm of the group.
And that's a good way of putting it. We're enthusiastic, and I think that our awards committee this year, when they presented our Legislator of the Year to our state senator, Curtis Hertel Jr., the length of the description I gave them for why he should get the award and why he and us are passionate about parks, the chair of our awards committee told me that he had to cut it down some because it was just way too darn long.
Hey, the enthusiasm is matched with hard work. That's all I can see.
That's right. And again, he's not up for any kind of election, but I can't say enough nice things about how Curtis Hertel has helped us And of course, our own Julie Brixey helps us immeasurably also.
Wonderful. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for tuning in to a candidate interview with the Meridian Township Democratic candidate incumbent Michael McDonald. I'm Ava Bratz, and I'd also like to invite you to tune in to our live election coverage Tuesday, August 4th on HOMTV.